I used to think that the only way to change, to glow up, to rebrand was through self-discipline, was through push energy, was through motivation and like making myself do stuff. But in this video, I want to share 6 easier ideas that you can use to become your best self that aren't reliant on push energy, that aren't reliant on discipline, that feel flowy and natural. And this is not coming from a place of you need to glow up, you need to rebrand, you need to do better. This comes from a place of we all have parts of ourselves that if we glue them up a little, if we worked on, would make our lives better. Number 1, start thinking about what you want to do differently. The more specific you get about what processes your future self follows, the easier it will be for your brain to start slipping you into those processes. So ask yourself, if you fast forwarded 1 year in the future, you're watching your future self live out a week in the life. What are they doing differently than what you currently do? And instead of like the boring, generic, like, well, she's eating healthier, she's spending time in nature, actually outline the processes that your future self follows. Get so detailed that it's almost like you are preparing to job share. You're giving future you explicit instructions on how to behave. For example, my future self wakes up on a Sunday and she thinks to herself, what would be the most delightful way to spend my time today? What would make my future self so happy? She sits with that question. She almost outlines what the day is going to look like in her mind. She visualizes it. And as soon as she has a clear picture of what her day is going to look like, she gets up and she gets ready. That is a clear outline of the process that your future self follows. When you start to get really clear on those processes, your brain has something to hold on to. Even just writing down the processes that your future self follows almost forces you to mentally rehearse those processes. Like you will mentally rehearse following those ways of thinking and those ways of acting. And if you really wanted to become your best self, each month of the year, you could just pick one little micro process that you want to practice to move towards your best self and create actual change. Number 2, change your day-to-day choices. Your whole life is dictated by tiny daily choices. Little moments where you're like, do I wake up and go exercise or do I sleep in? Do I get takeaway or do I make my meal at home? Do I stay up scrolling on my phone or do I read a book? And those choices feel so small in the moment. And then you look back at your year and your year is quite literally made up of those choices. The better you get at those tiny, seemingly insignificant choices throughout your days, the easier it is to be the best version of yourself. And to get better at these choices, you have to get better at a skill called integrative thinking. Integrative thinking is about being able to take 2 opposing options. For example, get sushi, make a meal at home, and then being able to find another option that still gets you what you want. You can practice this using the cloud method from the book Corkscrew Solutions. Write down your 2 options, write down the benefits of both options, and then ask yourself, how do I get the best of both worlds? For example, the other day I actually faced this exact dilemma. Do I get sushi even though I'm trying to cut down on takeaway, or do I make food at home? I wanted the delicious taste of sushi. I also wanted to save money. And then I was like, wait a minute. I'm gonna make myself a sushi bowl. I have all the ingredients. I got the best of both worlds. This is something that you can do in your head at any time. You don't really need to do the cloud thing. And if it does anything, it breaks you out of all or nothing thinking. Maybe you don't get the best of both worlds. Maybe the decision you land on isn't as rewarding as you'd want it to be, but at least you're not leaning into all or nothing thinking and then inevitably choosing nothing. Idea number 3, find better rewards. My favorite kind of changes are changes that happen without me even realizing that they're happening. When I have naturally started eating a bit healthier, when my morning routine just seems to come together. And the thing that these changes always have in common is that I found a more rewarding way of doing things that appeals to me more than the way that I used to do things. This quote from The Inner Game of Tennis sums up this way of moving into your best self. It is a painful process to fight one's way out of deep mental grooves. It's like digging yourself out of a trench. But there is a natural and more childlike method. A child doesn't dig his way out of old grooves, he starts new ones. A child doesn't have to break the habit of crawling because they don't think that they have a habit. They just leave it as they find walking an easier way to get around. When natural, positive, low to no effort changes start happening in your life, it's usually because you've found a more natural and rewarding way of being. And this is something that you can almost train your brain to look out for when there's an area of your life that's not really working, just by prompting yourself with a question like, what would be rewarding for me right now? Like, what would genuinely feel good to do? But sometimes you do need to disenchant yourself from your current way of operating, which you can do using the next idea, which is raising awareness for change. So a lot of other changes that I've experienced quite naturally without too much effort, have come from becoming deeply aware of behaviors that are not serving me. And I think everyone has had moments like that, moments where you've snapped and you've gone, no, I am never going to that place. I am never seeing that person. I am never behaving that way again. And then you've followed through. And it's almost as if your brain made the decision for you. It just calmly decided, no, thank you, not for me. And that process plays out when you raise your awareness. For example, in my early 20s, I always used to drink coffee, even though it reliably made me anxious. It was just habitual until one day I was traveling in the middle of Germany. I was drinking my latte. My senses were heightened up to here. I was feeling everything at level 100. And I became so aware of how horrible the caffeine was making me feel, how much it was aggravating my anxiety. And there's a lot to be said about caffeine anxiety and whether it's in your head and blah, 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 but we're not talking about that today. But I quit coffee on the spot. I was like, no, thank you. We're not doing this again. I don't know if I quit it while I was there or if when I got back, I just stopped. To this day, I don't drink coffee except for a rare occasion. And I've also replaced it in my life now with matcha, which just doesn't seem to do the same thing. So I've found a more rewarding behavior to replace my old behavior. And naturally, I'm never like, yes, I really want a coffee because I have a way better alternative. And all that happened to change that behavior was just my awareness being raised in the moment, which is something that you can do just by being deeply, deeply present and aware. Idea number 5, hypothesize. You have at some point come to the conclusion, maybe goal setting doesn't do it for me. You might be right. In your case, goal setting might not be the right fit because research has hinted that goal setting can actually make you do worse if you don't have a strategy to achieve your goal that you believe in. So if you set a goal to buy a house next year, but you don't have a strategy to buy a house, that can backfire. Studies of teams have actually shown that you are better off telling a team to just do their best than having them set a performance goal like earn X dollars without a solid strategy to achieve that performance goal. So when you have goals, big dreams that you want to achieve, but you don't actually have the strategies in place to achieve those dreams, you're probably better off setting a learning goal. For example, figure out what strategies I need to implement to buy a home, earn X dollars. Think of this as hypothesizing your way to success. And the hypothesis could literally start out as, well, I have a hypothesis that I will stick to my gym habit this year if I have a friend that goes to the same gym as me. That's my hypothesis. I'm gonna test it. It could also be, I have this hypothesis that teachers really want digital planners. And if I create digital planners on Etsy for teachers, they're gonna pop off. Thomas Edison created 1,000 unsuccessful light bulbs, all based on hypotheses regarding how one might create a light bulb. It took him 1,000 tries, but he just kept on hypothesizing his way to success. And so can you. Idea number 6, focus on your systems. If you wanna become your best self in the next year of your life, you need to stop focusing on yourself and you need to start focusing on your systems. In the wise words of Jemima Kirk, I think you guys think about yourself too much, and that's self-directed too. That's a dig at like everyone, that's a dig at humanity. Once again, Thomas Edison, 1,000 light bulbs. Do you know what Thomas Edison did not do when one light bulb experiment failed? He didn't sit there and go, man, I suck. I am flawed. Something's wrong with me that I can't get this light bulb thing right. I'm dumb. Thomas didn't even think about himself when he failed. He went back to his hypothesis. He went back to his system. He went, what do I need to tweak about the system that might make this work next time? Imagine how much time he would have wasted if after every light bulb failure, he just started thinking about himself. I call these two mindsets the systems mindset versus the self-focused mindset. And if you can reprogram yourself to react to any kind of failure in your life, any instance of, oh, I didn't stick to my running habit, oh, I'm, not being my best version of myself. If you can learn to react to that from a systems perspective and immediately start going like, okay, well, what do I need to tweak about my hypothesis? What do I need to tweak about my systems, my processes? That is when you start to step into the best version of yourself. I recently created a systems thinking versus self-focused thinking session on my app Intention. If that's something you want to deep dive into, I'll have that linked below. If you liked this video, you'll definitely like my video on how to plan your best year yet. I'm gonna have that link down in the description as well as on the screen, especially if you're in that New Year's energy, you're getting focused and ready for the new year. Perfect video to watch. I appreciate you so much and I'll see you soon.